Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to 2024, the calendar of the Christians. It's like 2056 or 57 or something like that. No, 2557, 56 on the Buddhist calendar. But we go by the Christian calendar, 2024. I'd like to start class by asking you to connect with each other for a minute. I'm going to talk, I feel like the core of what I'm going to talk about tonight is Sangha, as community, and the importance of drawing near and sustaining connections with Sangha, with people who are wise, or at least attempting to be wise, have the intention to be wise. So, reflecting for a moment on who are the wise people in your life, who are like, rather than talking about yourself, like we'll break into small groups and tell your small group about, 2 or 3 people in your life that inspire you and support you and encourage you in your practice, in your recovery, in your path to healing or awakening, whatever you want to call it, about who are kind of 2 or 3 people that are part of that, what we would call Sangha for you. And so in the room, better to get into a group with 2 or 3 people that you don't know rather than people that you do know. And at home, I put you in these random breakout groups. Okay. We'll have a period of sitting meditation. I'll give some meditation instructions and then talk and discussion. Finding a way to sit that is sustainable. Find a posture where your body is upright, but also relaxed. Allowing our eyes to be closed gently, softly. Releasing tension from the face, the brow, the jaw, the neck and shoulders, and the belly. Bringing an attitude of loving kindness, friendliness, unconditional self-acceptance, accepting the mind, the heart, the body, just as it is in this moment. And bringing mindfulness to the body, present time, non-judgmental, kind awareness of the sensations that are present. And spending a few minutes bringing mindfulness to the breath, choosing to direct our awareness to awareness of breathing, sensations created by the breath. Trying to let everything else be in the background. The thoughts may continue to arise and pass, but trying to ignore the mind as we pay attention to the body breathing. Disengaging from the planning, remembering tendency of mind. as we engage mindfulness of the body, sitting, breathing. When you find your awareness having been drawn back into thinking and you're planning or worrying or whatever the mind's up to, just disengage, come back to the breath, not stopping the thoughts, but stop paying attention to them, choosing to return to the physical reality of sitting, feeling the contact with the chair, the cushion, returning to the breath. beginning to investigate the feeling tone, the second foundation of mindfulness. Even just with the awareness of the breath, you perceive the sensations of the breath as pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. The contact with the chair, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. About the contact of your hands resting in your lap. How's that feel? Pleasant or unpleasant? Neutral? One of the reasons we sit still or try to sit still in meditation is to give ourselves the opportunity to experience some unpleasant sensations, to change our relationship to pain, to unpleasantness. As we turn towards what is hard to bear, what is unpleasant, rather than avoiding it or ignoring it. So this is both on the physical level, sensations in the body, as well as emotions, if any, sadness or sorrow, loneliness, grief, anger or fear arise in the heart and mind, bringing awareness to the unpleasant nature of these emotions, the afflictive emotions. Rather than ignoring what the mind wants to think about, the plans, the worries, the resentments, the reminiscing, the fantasies. Include the mental activity with an interest, a curiosity. Are these pleasant thoughts or unpleasant thoughts? Or perhaps neutral? Likewise, the sense doors, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting. The inquiry of what's happening right now. What sounds are being perceived? Is there smell, tastes, images, even with the eyes closed? And are these pleasant or unpleasant or neutral? The more we bring our direct attention to pain, the more we learn to accept it, tolerate it, see the impermanent, changing nature of unpleasantness, how it's arising, sustaining, and passing, changing. Mindfulness of the unpleasant teaches us to respond with compassion, with mercy. And as we bring awareness to the pleasant, also becoming more and more awake to the impermanent nature of pleasant sensation, emotions, thoughts, arising and passing. We learn to let go, to stop clinging and becoming attached to the impermanent pleasures. But to respond with non-attached appreciation, enjoying, savoring, appreciating that which is pleasant in the moment, but knowing that it's impermanent, transient. Present time, kind awareness of the physical body of the emotions, the mind, the sense doors. Leads to insight, understanding, wisdom into the impermanent nature of all of our experience, every thought arising and passing, every sensation, every emotion. The unreliable or unsatisfactory truth, nature. Of impermanent phenomena. And we begin to understand the impersonal, the not personal, not self nature of the mind, how it just continues to think all by itself, judging and comparing and fearing and planning and remembering just automatically without any real agency. The body, the nervous system rejecting pain, not soothing, not being tender or compassionate towards our pain, but this instinctual drive away from the unpleasant, instinctual craving for the pleasant. We begin to wake up to how impersonal this whole process is. Not your fault. It's not personal. It's just what it's like to have a body, a heart, a mind. We learn to meet it with compassion, the pain, non-attachment, and non-identification. The wisdom that understands. The mind has a mind of its own. The body craves. Not who or what we are. This larger awareness that observes and can respond wisely. when I was on a retreat last year with Ajahn Amro, one of my teachers, I talked a couple of times about this sutta, this teaching, one of the historical teachings from the Buddha about the importance of friendship, and that the whole kind of path to liberation in this particular teaching that I'll share with you tonight. I mentioned a couple weeks ago or last week. The path starts with who you're hanging out with. Kind of maybe the most important thing is who do we surround ourselves with. And then when I was with him recently, a few weeks ago, when we were interviewing him about refuge recovery and a Buddhist perspectives on addiction and recovery, he was quite quick to reference this teaching and the importance of community. For, of course, it's core to the Buddha, which has nothing to do with addiction and recovery, just for everyone. But he sort of he said, it's true for everyone, but it seems to be especially true for addicts and alcoholics, to really need each other in a even more so than the non-addicts. And maybe that's not true, maybe it's not fair, but it was an emphasis put on it. So I'm going to share some of it's a little bit long, but let's see, share the translation of this sutta. The way it actually is written is, it starts with, you ever had that question, where does ignorance come from? So from a Buddhist perspective, it's ignorance to the way it is, and responding with a sort of ignorant relationship to pleasure, like clinging is a form of ignorance, aversion is a form of ignorance. It's the opposite of wisdom. The wise relationship to pleasure is non-attached appreciation. The wise relationship to pain is compassion. But when we don't have wisdom, we respond ignorantly with clinging, with aversion. The wise relationship to the mind is to not take it so personally, to not believe all of our thoughts and to not obey all of them, because some of them are so confused, so ignorant. But you ever have that question, and maybe it's philosophical, of like, well, where does all of this ignorance come from? Are we born ignorant? And maybe I think that there's a lot of people that want to think like, well, babies are born perfect and uncorrupted and beautiful, innocent children. Now, of course, part of this perspective in the Buddha's time and this teaching is, and we're not only born once, but over and over, the rebirth doctrine, the reincarnation perspective. But I think it was common, and I believe that this teaching comes from somebody asking the Buddha, okay, well, here we are in ignorance, not free from suffering, but responding with clinging and aversion and self-centeredness. And where does that come from? And so he starts the teaching by saying, a beginning point for ignorance did not exist. Then it came into play, but it cannot be discerned. This has been said. Nevertheless, so first of all, he's just saying, like, There was a beginning point, but we can't figure out where it was. It cannot be discerned. It is one of the things the Buddha said is unfathomable. So you ever ask yourselves those unanswerable questions? Unfathomable. Where did the ignorance that's led this cycle, where did it begin? Because the mind wants to pinpoint. It's like it was that childhood trauma that led to all of my and the Buddha just said it's unknowable, undiscernible. He said, nevertheless, it can be known, discerned, that ignorance comes from some of the conditionings. He says, I tell you, ignorance has as its food, and it's not without its food. There are that which feeds, that fuels ignorance in this lifetime. And what is the fuel for ignorance? The 5 hindrances, it should be said. And the 5 hindrances are fueled by 3 forms of misconduct. And it doesn't say here what he's referring to, but probably the first 3 precepts, the 3 forms of misconduct: lying, stealing, and sexual misconduct, or killing, lying, and sexual misconduct. But so some 3 forms of the hindrances of craving that then becomes theft, or the hindrance of anger and aversion that then becomes violence or killing, or the craving that becomes lust that becomes misconduct in our sexual activity. There's 3 forms of misconduct. And what's the food or the fuel for the misconduct? Lack of renunciation, lack of restraint, sort of obeying the mind. Because hindrances, my sense is like hindrances are impersonal. You have craving, you have aversion, you have self-centeredness, you have sloth and torpor and anxiousness. All of that just seems like it's not your fault, but a lack of restraint. It turns into an action, turns into misconduct. And what is the fuel for the lack of restraint that becomes misconduct? It says a lack of mindfulness. So when we're not doing what we're doing here, training the mind to be present, to investigate what's happening and how it feels, the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and impersonal nature. When we're not doing that, then we follow the mind. We don't break our, I like to frame, mindfulness is breaking our addiction to the mind, no longer obeying the mind, but questioning it, investigating it, and responding rather than reacting to what the mind is doing or the heart is doing. So it's a lack of mindfulness and alertness. It's inappropriate attention. And what is the the way that this is translated is, appropriate attention is when we're mindful. And when we're not mindful, it's an inappropriate attention, being lost in the future, being lost in the past. The food for inappropriate attention is a lack of faith, a lack of conviction, not being inspired to be mindful. And the fuel for the lack of conviction is not hearing the true Dharma. When we're not being reminded of what is true, we're not hearing it, we're not listening to it, we're not taking in Dhamma, truth. And what is the food for not hearing the true Dhamma? Association with people of no integrity. Sometimes this is translated as association with fools. And, like when you're hanging with a whole bunch of people who lack integrity, who are foolish, who are, when your closest friends are not interested in wisdom and compassion and liberation, then you don't hear the Dharma. You don't have practice mindfulness. You don't have conviction, faith. You're not inspired. Thus, when not association with people of integrity, wise people, I think, for us, we have to lower the bar a little bit and kind of like people who are at least trying. Maybe not the most wise, not everybody has the greatest integrity, but at least a group of people who are trying to be wise, who are trying to be kind, compassionate, generous, mindful. When not associating with people with no integrity. He says, thus, when not associating with people of integrity is made full, it fills the conditions for not hearing the Dharma. When not hearing the Dharma, it fills the condition for a lack of faith. When the lack of faith is happening, it fills the conditions for lack of mindfulness. Lack of mindfulness leads to a lack of restraint, of the renunciation. And a lack of renunciation leads to the 3 forms of misconduct: greed, hatred, delusion, killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, intoxication. And then, the 5 hindrances are made full. We live in ignorance when we believe them, when we're obeying the 5 hindrances. So that's how it starts. And then he flips it. He says, okay, you want to know where ignorance comes from? I'll tell you. It comes from these 10, I think there's 10 in there. 10 processes. And he says, we want to know where wisdom comes from? I'll tell you now, where clear knowing and release have their, where liberation, where wisdom comes from, has their fuel. The 7 factors for awakening. It should be said, and I tell you, the 7 factors for awakening have their fuel. And what is the fuel? What is the food? What feeds the awakening factors? The 4 foundations of mindfulness. If you want to be wise, mindfulness will lead to wisdom. And what fuels the 4 foundations of mindfulness? The 3 forms of right conduct. Renunciation, not killing, not lying, not stealing, not behaving inappropriate around intoxicants or sexuality, or restraint of the senses, mindfulness, alertness. And what is the, where was I? 7 factors. Okay, so he goes through all of that. And then he says, thus, when associating with people of integrity, and this is the way that Ajahn Amaro was framing it, was starting here. He says, when we draw near to wise people, when you make Sangha a priority, when you make sure that you're, find people who are practicing, he says, when you're associating with good, wise friends, you're more likely to hear the Dharma. Your friends will be like, hey, let's go see this teacher. Let's go listen to this Dharma talk. Let's listen to this podcast, whatever it is. Let's tune in on, your wise friends will encourage such wise behavior. Not let's just go see Slayer. Let's go, all right, nothing wrong with seeing Slayer. You can go see Lamb of God. But also let's go hear some Dharma talks. Wise friends fill the condition for hearing the Dharma. Hearing the Dharma leads to faith, to conviction, to being inspired. Oh yeah, I heard that talk. It inspired me to practice mindfulness, appropriately train my mind to pay attention to the 3 characteristics, the impermanent nature of all things. We hear that, even though you know that, you hear the Dharma, and it reminds you, oh yeah, everything's impermanent. Sometimes I forget and I get quite attached. Letting go. I'm reminded. Renunciation, 3 forms of right contact, 4 foundations of mindfulness, 7 factors of awakening are made full. They fill the condition for clear knowing and release. And it all tracks back to, who are you hanging out with? Ignorance comes from, who are you hanging out with? Wisdom comes from, who are you hanging out with? Who are we drawing near to? And this is a very strong theme in the time of the Buddha. Very consistent and persistent teaching. One of the three refuges: take refuge in the Sangha. Find a community of wise people and draw near to them. And in some places in the teachings, not so much this one, he goes as far as to say, avoid fools, avoid those without integrity. Don't. And so I'm thinking of this teaching. Some of it's personal in my own life, but maybe also some of it's like New Year's. I saw somebody's, it was Ice-T, the rapper Ice-T. Have you seen his social media lately? He's like super self-helpy these days. He's gone from gangster rap and, actor to like self-help guy, but sort of, thug self-help. And Ice-T on this post was saying, he said, like, my kind of resolution for this coming year is to avoid a whole bunch of people that are not wise, that don't support, don't fuel, that, to block a whole bunch of people and to lose a whole bunch of phone numbers and to, kind of break up with some of those unwholesome relationships. So I want to take a pause here to ask all of us to think about, I started the small group saying, like, who are your close ones? Who are the people who support you? Probably some people are like, fuck, I don't really have them. I want them, but I don't really have them. Some of you have them. Some of us have some quite close people, inspiring people of integrity. But probably much easier for us, and if I'd ask the question that I'm asking now, which is like, who are the people in your life that aren't very good influences? Who are the people in your life that actually will encourage bad behavior, that will encourage, dishonesty or intoxication or some of the kind of unwise actions? And I don't know for sure, and I didn't want to go push too hard for this, but I think it's worth all of us considering, are there some people in my life that it would actually be healthier to let go of, to break up with? I've seen this in my own life where sometimes the historical connections, where it's like, well, we've been friends for decades. But, decades ago when we became friends, we were both into lying and stealing, misconduct. And I'm no longer interested in that. And they haven't changed much. And there's a historical connection there. Old friends are the old friends. But they're not feeding this path. They're not supportive or encouraging or interested in this path to liberation. And, each of us reflecting on how much time and energy we're willing to give to people who aren't going to help us hear the Dharma, help us practice the Dharma, support us in that way. So just for your reflection, it's worth at some point having good boundaries and saying, like, I'm not so interested in those relationships, even though they are historical. Maybe they take a back seat. You ever heard this? There's a model. I think it's maybe connected with a psychological model of attachment theory. And I forget who it comes from. Maybe John Bowlby, one of those psychologists. And he said, in our relational realm, each person can have one primary attachment person, one primary relationship. You can have one, and he calls it an A. He goes A's, B's, and C's. So you can have one A, and that's your partner. You can have one, and there's only one person. That's somebody that you're in contact with every day, you're close to, you share everything with, hopefully honest and open. And, so thinking about that person, and hopefully we want that person to be a person of integrity, a person of ethics, hopefully a person that's on the path with you, or at least supportive of your path to liberation. So you have one B, and I think that he says the maximum of sort of close friends that we can really sustain, where you talk to them regularly, they're updated on what's happening in your life, you're updated on what's happening on their life, and it's, he said, I think it's 5, and we call those Bs. You can have 5 Bs. So reflecting each of us for a minute, like, who are my 5 Bs? Who are the 5 people that I kind of know what's going on with me? And maybe it's not 5 for you. Maybe it's only 3. Maybe it's only 2 or 3. I don't know. But maximum of 5. He says, when you start getting beyond 5, you try to kind of stay in contact with 10 people on that sort of closeness. It gets, you don't have the time and energy if you have a job to really sustain 10 really close friends. You can have like 5 close friends, and then they become Cs, those sort of associates of like, they're not really my tight homies, but they're friends, and they're, maybe you have lots of Cs, maybe you have dozens of people that are in the C category that you talk to occasionally, and you're happy to see them and they're happy to see you, and you check in every 6 months, and whatever it is. Does this model make sense? 1A, small handful of Bs, lots of Cs. Acquaintances are Cs. Maybe acquaintances are even Ds. Cs are like your friends. And then maybe there's another level of like Ds, which are like people that you're acquainted with, but they're not really your friends. Maybe, you don't have their phone number or something. They don't have your phone number. Maybe that's a whole nother. But Cs are more like, no, I've bigger kind of circle of, and even in the Sangha. Maybe you have your A Sangha person, your primary, like, this is my my mentor or my sponsor or my teacher or my, friend that really, is the one to be like, yo, let's go practice. Let's go to this retreat, like the person who's encouraging and supporting, and you have that A in the Sangha. And maybe you have some Bs in the Sangha. But as we look at our lives, if you honestly assess your friendships, how many of your Bs are wise or trying to be wise? How many of your Bs are Sangha in that way? And how many of our Bs are historical friendships with, hooligans who aren't interested in what we're interested in? No questions yet, just for reflection. And the encouragement here from this sutta, from the Buddha, to do what we can to make those Bs in our life, those 5 people that we're spending most of our time and energy connected with, into people who are going where we want to go. Who are practicing the Dharma, who are listening to the Dharma, who are trying to get free from the causes of suffering in their life. And as you assess your own we all look at our lives and say, like, where do I have those people? And, what do I need to do to establish those friendships? It's one of the reasons why I always start class here with making you talk to each other, because this is a good place to establish those kinds of friendships. Even for the people who aren't in the room or on Zoom and all of the different places, you get in those little breakout rooms, you start to become familiar with each other, you start to connect. Not everybody has the ability to show up in person to a community like this. Some of you are all over the state or country or planet. So some encouragement to consider breaking up with some of your unhealthy friends, or at least putting them into the C category, demoting them. Do you have any of those friends? Just thinking about, you have any of those friends that like you talk to all of the time, but they're pretty much they kind of give you bad advice almost all of the time? You talk to regularly, but they're never going to remind you to be compassionate. They're always going to be like, yeah, you should suffer about that. Forgiveness isn't even really on their radar. Wisdom isn't even really on their radar. And when you talk to them about what's going on in your life, they give you that sort of support for meeting your pain with ignorance rather than with wisdom. They encourage bad behavior, ignorant response rather than wise response. So I encourage you to consider demoting those friends and to promoting. Maybe you have some C's, some people here in the Sangha, people in other places in your recovery community or other spiritual communities that you've sort of like just keep as associates, and actually consider promoting them and bringing them in to your B category and say, I'm going to call this person more regularly. I'm going to invite this person out for coffee and see if they're going to the talk, and see if even for the Zoom community of like saying like, hey, we've been in these breakout rooms a couple of times, can I get your number? Is it okay if I call you? Making those kind of connections to sustain the Buddha's encouragement here to draw near to the wise, because it's for our liberation. The causes and conditions of liberation start with who we're associating with. Does it make sense? Now, I want to have some questions, and I'm inspired by this. And I'm a little bit confused by it. And I think one of the things, like, when the Buddha says stuff like, avoid all fools and only associate with the wise, I do feel like we have a situation where if people were practicing that too much, if we were too rigid about that, then who would welcome us when we show up as the ignorant fool seeking help? But there is a difference between the ignorant fool that we all have been showing up seeking help than the ignorant fool that's not interested. I've found, a big part of my life, informed both by Buddhism and by recovery communities, is to be of service and to be there and to be available and to try to inspire and educate and be of service to people who aren't quite interested yet. Not like proselytizing or anything, but modeling. And over and over for me in the communities, the ignorance-based communities that I love to hang out in, like the punk rock scene, or this last weekend I was in Las Vegas and I was at the Punk Rock Museum, and Fat Mike from No Effects and Fat Records, who opened the place, was like, came out and we were visiting for a while, and he was like, I'm so grateful for when I tried to get sober and I went to your treatment center. And it was all because like I stayed connected to that scene, and because we've known each other, for decades, and and so I personally haven't avoided all fools. I associate with a whole bunch of, how does it translated? People of low integrity, or in the motorcycle world, or in the tattoo world, or in the, car world. I hang out with a bunch of knuckle draggers. They're my people, but they're pretty much C's. And the B's in my life meditate on one level or another. The people who I'm in regular contact with have, recovery, have Dharma, have integrity, have ethics, or at least are trying to. And those other realms are C's, I love to hang out in the seedy realms. I was reminded, I was playing poker the other day. Poker is also another realm of seediness of people with low integrity. Actually, the Buddha says, don't gamble, because if you gamble, you'll hang out with people of low character. I'm like, yeah, that's true. But I was playing poker the other day, and there was two people there who were like, oh yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. I met you playing poker and started going to meditation because I met you. And because like being in that realm, and they say, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I teach meditation. Like, I thought you were a tattoo artist. And then, being there and being open about it. And then they came and practiced and kind of got the seeds of the Dharma planted. So I don't think we want to go too hard. What I'm saying is of completely avoiding all of those scenes, but whatever scenes we go into, we bring our mindfulness, we bring our ethics, we bring the openness of like, this is what I'm about. I'm trying to end suffering in my life. I'm trying to be wise. I'm trying to be compassionate. And if you're interested, you're welcome to join me, having that sort of attitude. So I'll leave it there and open for questions, comments, your experience with trying to develop these Sangha relationships and challenges you have with it, or please, Jay.
It's so interesting that you bring this up tonight. It's just been so on the top of my mind. Really like last night, which was ostensibly supposed to be a night go out with a bunch of people with low integrity. And my night was supposed to go something like this, like some friends were, oh, come over to my place and we'll sort of like pre-drink and we'll order in some pizza and then we'll go to this other bar. That all of it, I was like, I don't want to do any of this. And I was like, why don't we get a table while we're at night market, let's all go and sit at a table and be out doing something. And I knew that what this was going to be was like some people, they were ordering pizza just as like kind of set dressing, but they just wanted to hang out and do coke, right? And like the pizza was just like, well, at least there's pizza, so that kind of keeps us on.
Balances the piles of cocaine.
We're not going to eat any of it. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do any of that. I'm going to go here and spend a couple hours with Noah and Sangha and the Dharma, and then get some Thai food and go home. And everybody I spoke to today who went was like, man, it was awful. It was awful. And it was funny because I was sitting here last night going, I wonder what would have happened if they had come here. Or if I had even mentioned, hey, what do you guys think about maybe coming to this? And I just, it's sort of, what you're talking about doing, funny enough, it's so tricky. It's so difficult to try to, I don't think there's any way that I could convince them to come here. And personally, I guess sort of my observation, my question is wondering if it's also not just people of low integrity, but an environment. How much of it is environmental? Not to shit on LA or California, but then maybe the environment has to be taken into account as well as an environment of low integrity.
That's an interesting question. I have to reflect on it more to have a good, but my sense is that the environment is created by the people. And, even in like LA, there was a long time where there was no, or very, very little this kind of Buddhism happening in LA, like in the kind of insight Theravadan tradition. 20 years ago, there was no meditation center here. And then, 18 years ago, I moved here and Trudy Goodman moved here and Inside LA and Against the Stream. And now, now there's, with Refuge Recovery and with Against the Stream, and, people travel here because of the culture of a bit like our meditation center. That, you know, like this is one of the places where it's really happening, and there's lots of people that are really connected to it. And you can go to refuge meetings every day, and you can come to morning meditation every day here, and you can. So yeah, LA is a place of low integrity, but within this culture, there's pockets of really high integrity and of wisdom, and you know, there's Dharma practice happening here, opportunity happening here, where, and you know, like half of these people on Zoom, not that they want to be in LA, but they wish that they had this, you know, in their hometown, that, you know, that they wish that there was the kind of access to this kind of Sangha. You know, whether it's, you know, I see, you know, James in Hawaii, or, you know, up north, or, you know, I mean, I have to look through who's here, but, you know, kind of all over the country, people being like, you guys have it the best down there. You got Sangha. And, you know, these folks are like, we have to zoom into Sangha, you know, or Michelle visiting from Northern California now because it doesn't have it up there, coming down here to be part of this. So it's the people. And there's lots of places where maybe the culture is a bit more wholesome than Los Angeles culture, but there's no Sangha. You know what I mean? So that maybe there's something about the suffering. I don't, maybe it's me because I, you know, San Francisco, New York, LA, my adult life, you know, and these, you know, because I just like cities. So San Francisco, New York, LA, big sanghas, because, you know, there's so much suffering, and there's also so much inspiration to end suffering in urban environments. You can go out to the rural, you can go out to the desert, and it's not so hectic, but there's also not that much support, probably. Depends on which desert you live in. You know, where you are in the rural environments. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, anything from people at home about my encouragement to break up with your unwise friends, and or at least demote them, and to promote some wiser people to your closest, your nearest and dearest?
No, what's the sutta called that you read?
It is Sutta 61 from the Anguttara Nikaya, and it's in the Book of Tens. Book of Tens, Sutta 61, Anguttara Nikaya. It's the Avijja Sutta, the Sutta on ignorance. Did you find it?
I'm going to see if I can text it to you.
Okay, yeah. Sutta 61 from the Book of Tens, the list of 10 things. Yeah.
I was wondering how community and beyond sitting and being with each other in the space and having a safe space together, how those bonds develop, because we come in, we talk a little bit initially, we talk as part of after we've meditated, and then we leave. So there's the day longs and so on. How do you build the relationships, especially some people like myself who may be introverts and not very good at extroverting?
It's a great question, and it's just sort of awkward as an adult to try to make new friends, isn't it? Isn't it just sort of awkward to be like, can I have your phone number? You're nice. You seem, will you be my friend? It is, it's fucking awkward, but it is what's being encouraged here. And sometimes that happens organically, from coming and you're in the small groups and you're sitting next to each other and you're, after doing silent meditation retreat together, you've done that, where you feel, oh, like I didn't talk to these people all week, but I feel so bonded to them and I want to keep in touch. And then you keep in touch. And so sometimes it happens organic, like that trip that we took, Sebastian was commenting last night about that trip we took to Thailand last month or in November. And we had 35 people on it, and almost everybody was either here or on Zoom for the intention setting. And there's a WhatsApp group where people are still posting and still, because we went through, and he was talking about how, like, even more so than going on a meditation retreat, doing a travel thing with a group from the Sangha.
The shared time.
There's all of that shared time and annoying each other and being hot on the bus together and practicing together. And but it's I don't have the answer really, other than like be awkward and ask people for their phone number and say hello and go out of your way to say, like, would you like to get coffee? When I was younger and, probably single, and almost every night after I would teach, we'd be like, okay, and we're going to dinner and anybody that wants to come. But like I was just talking to Luke about this earlier, it's like back then we would go 7:30 to 9 and then we would go to dinner at 10 o'clock in Hollywood, and be like, yeah, I was in my 30s and I'm down to go to dinner at 10 o'clock. And now I'm like, fuck, it's almost 8:30. Can I end a few minutes early tonight? Like, and I'm not going to dinner with anybody. Like, or, now it's like, okay, let's go grab tacos real quick. And then, and not that late night dinners that it used to be, which made it, I think it made it easier for people to connect. When I was driving that, everyone's welcome and let's do that. Now you're kind of on your own. You got to connect. You got to do the awkward, will you be my friend? Are you interested in connecting? And then, then there's the awkwardness of like, well, is this person just hitting on me? Or are they really wanting to be my friend? Or, I'm not sure. It's hard to tell these days.
One thing that we did up at Jeff and Emily's Sangha is we did a kayak event. Like we did stuff like that, like where, okay, everyone who wants to come, we're going to Half Moon Bay and we're going to kayak. And then we were stuck in these, kayaks together and paired up randomly with people we might never talk to at all, like age differences, interest differences, life stages, all that. And there we were, and we had to do this kayak trip, like, and it's cold and it's like, one person knows how to paddle because they've kayaked before and the other person doesn't. And then the kayaks turn, and by the end of it, like everything's so funny. And it's you bonded with this person you want to talk to, and the Sangha got to spend time together, and so that's another way, like, coming up with these little events, whoever can come whenever, and anyone can suggest something,
Yeah.
So it's just, kind of being brave, like you said. Like,
I mean, all of those help. Going to retreats, coming to the day long, coming to class regularly, all of that stuff helps. And at some point, you just have to be like, are you interested in getting coffee? And then from there, can I have your phone number? Are you interested in can take a hike? And then from there, you see if this is somebody that you want to actually, and also, warning of like, just because you meet somebody at a meditation group doesn't mean they're trustworthy or wise. Yeah.
Yeah, just don't let people know where you live for a very long time.
I think that's important, Jess, like also to use discernment, because I know I'm pushing hard of like, hey, develop, and this is a pretty good place, but also there's creeps here.
Yeah.
Right, for sure sometimes. And so you do need to be careful and develop that discernment slowly to, make sure and to use your own discernment around like not too quickly giving somebody your address.
Not to scare you. Stranger danger.
Stranger danger too. Yeah, JJ.
So I've been in LA for almost 40 years, and heaven and hell are both in the same neighborhood. I can, it just depends on which lens I'm looking through. You know, right now, I can find a dealer in any room if I'm looking for him, and I can find a sober person now. You know, I can see the light on people, and I can see the darkness on people, and they're almost exactly the same physical places for me, you know, Santa Monica Valley. And I just was thinking this the other day, I stood on the same corner trying to score and then meditated, you know. And recently I realized I actually had to change my phone number the first time in all the time I've lived here, because I thought the people who I could count on were my lower companions. I thought they were my friends, and they were really parasites, and you know, and I can't see that. You know, when I'm in the need of addiction, that's the only people I think I can count on. And now in rooms and recovery and Sangha, those are the only people I can count on. Yeah, we don't come here because we're well, you know. I just can see the people who are speaking, you know.
Thank you. Maybe leave it there for tonight. Derek, you had raised your hand and then put it down. Did you want to say something online?
I guess one thing that I'd noticed kind of living in Chicago and just trying to find Sangha actually brought me here virtually. And I guess it was kind of just, if anyone had any luck kind of finding people who are like-minded without the benefit of maybe like an in-person Sangha. A lot of my friends, whenever I get meditation and such things, you know, they kind of just they're like, oh, I've tried it, doesn't work for me. And that's kind of the end of the conversation. But yeah, so that's kind of generally the question.
I mean, certainly there's lots of people here who have connected and sustained friendships from meeting people in these rooms. And, you know, half of our community, probably more than that, 3/4 are probably recovery people. And there's such an emphasis in the recovery world to like getting phone numbers and you know, being of service in that way. And it's not as awkward as it is in a meditation group to be like, can I have your phone number? Where it's sort of more expected in the recovery communities to be exchanging information. But you can do that here too, and encourage you to do that here. So we'll leave it there for tonight. I do have a day-long retreat coming up on January 14th. I think it's a Sunday. We're going to meditate from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., alternating sitting meditation and walking meditation. You're all invited. You can register on the website, againstthestream.com. If you want to come and you can't afford it, just let me know. I'll scholarship you. If you can't afford it, pay for it to support the center. All the money goes to supporting the nonprofit, the center. I teach for donation, and classes done by donation. Please be as generous as you can be. The suggested donation for dropping in on a Monday night is between $20 and $25. Think about what you pay for your yoga classes or your exercises classes or those kind of things, or your movies these days cost $20 to go see a fucking movie. And so if you can give $20 and pitch in, great. If you don't have it, you're welcome to be here, regardless of ability to donate. So thank you very much for joining me tonight. And may any goodness that comes from our practice be gathered and dedicated to the welfare and benefit of all living beings. May each one of us get as free as possible in this lifetime. And together, may we create a positive change on this planet.